What's going on, guys? This is part 7 of the twin turbo Le Mans build, and in the last video we did the intercooler, which was a lot of fun for me. This video we're going to do the oiling system. We're going to do the feed and return lines, and we're going to use the stuff that came with the Rev 9 kit, and hopefully everything works out. I really don't want to have to buy more braided line because this stuff's not cheap. Fittings aren't cheap. None of it's cheap. So hopefully everything that comes in the kit works. I'll show you the kit. So in the last video, after completing the intercooler system, I put my flanges on for the oil feeds, which have just a small hole inside, because I had to test fit my hose to make sure it cleared this flange, so I had to clock it just right. This one's not quite up and down like I'd like it to be. It's on an angle, but hopefully that's okay. I guess we'll find out, because if I turn it anymore, the line hits this flange and it just doesn't work well. But I'm gonna try this, and if this doesn't work well, I might have to swing it so that the barb sticking out is just past the flange over here, which might work out better. I think I still might clock it that way, because then it'll work better for my return, I believe. But over here, this is what came with the Rev 9 twin turbo kit. It came with some AN10 fittings, and it came with two 45s for each side, a straight. That's a JIC adapter that goes from a pipe thread to a JIC, because there's your return for the bottom. That's the flange for the bottom. And that guy just threads in there. So that way you can put any AN fitting you want on there, whether it be a 45 straight. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't give me a 90 degree. There's probably a reason behind that. I'll show you why. With this side, I took the wheel off to make it easier. If I put that flange on there, I got my hand out of the way, my intercooler pipe is right in the way. And I'm trying to get down over there. You can't see my bung. My bung is down there somewhere off the oil pan. But I gotta get from the turbo down to the oil pan, and this is gonna make it very difficult having the intercooler piping there. But I think what might work is if I put a 90 on the bottom. I know they want like a nice smooth fall off from the turbo, so you don't have any backup. You don't want the oil backing up inside the hose. But unfortunately, I'm gonna have to use a 90, so I went and ordered a couple of 90s to use, and hopefully I don't have oil backing up in the line because of this sharp end. But it's all I can do. It's a nice big hose. It's a 5/8 hose. That's what came with it. Unfortunately, it's only like a 2-foot long hose, but I think it'll work. The kit comes with 1/4-inch feed lines, and I already found out that these hoses are not near long enough for what I'm doing. One hose will be, because the feed on an LS is on the driver's side down at the bottom, right above your oil filter. That's where I'm getting my feed. One line will be long enough, but that side will not make it around down there. So I had a local hydraulic shop make me up a second hose that's just as long as the first. So I basically doubled the length of this guy, and just using a simple union like that. I gotta take it apart and put some pipe dope, high temperature sealant on it. Hopefully that stuff works. I've never used this stuff on hydraulic lines. I've only ever used it on my air ride system, which worked way better than Teflon tape. If you do an air ride, that no leaks. Teflon tape, I had a leak everywhere on this thing. But hopefully this stuff all pans out. I'm gonna try and get the, since I've already got the top flanges on, I'm gonna go ahead and throw the bottom flanges on. I'm gonna start with this side first, because I think this side's gonna give me the most trouble with the intercooler. Over there I've got tons of space. So we'll see if the 90-degree works. Okay, so the problem I'm having right now is with the adapter on, I've got no room with the intercooler piping here to get that on. So I've cracked all my nuts loose from the compressor side and the hot side, the exhaust side, I gotta reclock the center section. I'm gonna have to stick it on this side. So the center section is gonna be on an angle. It's not straight up and down, unfortunately, but hopefully it's okay. But it's just not gonna work like that. So I gotta get this fitting out on the outside of this pipe. So I just gotta clock it now. I don't know if that's gonna work because now my nut's hitting the flange. I have to see if I can get my feed line on that. And I can't. Well, that sucks. I'm gonna have to take this nut right off and see if I can spin it all the way. So I took this nut out that allowed me to spin the center section past the flange. I put the nut back in, and I'm not wild about the angle that this is on. It's pretty much like a 45-degree angle. I'm not sure if that's going to have an issue with the oil falling out the bottom, but right now that's all I can do. Because by doing that, I can easily get on there now. I got lots of room between the intercooler pipe and the fitting, so I would love to be able to turn that back more, but you can see how the flange is hitting that nut, so I can't spin it back anymore unless I want to cut the corner of that flange off, which I don't. So hopefully this doesn't cook my turbo. Guess we'll find out. I'm gonna try and get this line run now. I'm gonna feed it through on top of the steering here. It's gonna go right through here and then down to the bung, which I'll crawl under and show you. Okay, so I'm down under the front. You can see my one bung on that side. There's my other bung on the other side. But I actually have quite a bit of room to play with over there. And I'm just gonna bring it up over the frame. Try not to hit the steering and go up over the steering box. Hopefully that 2-foot 5/8 hose they give you is long enough. Time to find out. Okay, for those of you who have never put an AN fitting on the braided line before, I'm going to do this real quick for you, and to show you it's not hard at all. Biggest thing is you don't want to have a frayed end. Like, this is a pretty clean end, but sometimes you'll see them super frayed. If they're super frayed like that, you're not going to get this guy slid over. So I'm going to quickly zip this off and show you just how easy it is. I had already marked it, the length I needed, and I just wrapped electrical tape around it about 5 or 6 times. But the tape just helps it from fraying. I just gotta get the tape off. Helps if I put it on the right way. Figures I do the first one fine, and the second one that I want to film gives me problems. See, I already did the other end. And I swear it went easier than this. So I got it bottomed out all the way in there. It's hard to see when it's dark. You can kind of see it's bottomed out. But it'll go as far as the threads will allow it. Then I put a mark on it to make sure it doesn't back out as I'm threading the other part in. And it's bigger. All right, there's my mark. It didn't back out at all, and this particular style 90 allows me to still swivel the end, so I don't have to be too concerned about clocking it. But this end gave me more trouble than this end did, but they go together pretty easy. All right, I got drain number 1 put together. I don't like how flat this is sitting, but there still is a fall to it. It still drops off. It still goes down to the bottom on the oil pan, which is right up in there. So it works pretty good. And because it's a braided line, it can afford to sit there and rub on the frame. The worst it's gonna do is wear the paint off, but that'll work. You don't have to use braided line. That's what came with this kit. You can get away with rubber line as long as it doesn't wear on too much stuff, but braided line can afford to wear on stuff. It's a lot more durable, but more expensive. So I'm gonna take this fitting, this line, and figure out which angles I need, and I'm gonna slap the other side together. All right, I got the passenger side one done. This one was a lot easier because I had a lot more space to work with. I didn't have intercooler piping in my way. Didn't have my power steering or alternator in the way. So I was able to get in there pretty easy. So that side's done. So now I'm gonna move on to the oil feed lines. And if you remember from the earlier videos, I did the dual feed. Let's toss my tools under there for myself. Light. I've got my adapter up there right above the oil filter. So I've got my two fittings I got to adapt to there. I grabbed a couple 90-degree bends and 45-degree bends to see if it'll make the job easier, because I got to run the oil lines up, but I also want to keep them away from the exhaust that's going to be coming down here. So I might have to 90 them right away or 45 them if I can, just to keep it away from the exhaust. So I'm going to play around with these fittings and see which one works best, and I'll show you what I come up with. Okay, so here's what I came up with. I used a 90-degree fitting and a 45, and the hoses ended up being a little bit longer than I would like them to have been. The driver's side was probably about 6 inches longer than I wanted, and the other side was probably about a foot longer, but that's my fault because I had a second piece made up. But I didn't really know how long I needed it, so I just had one basically made up the same length as the ones that came in the kit. But to get rid of the excess, I actually have that one, the passenger side, curling back on top of the transmission and looping back towards the front. And the driver's side, originally I wanted it to come kind of up along the, right underneath the manifold and then down. But instead I had to bring it down and go under the engine mount and then straight back. It's not a big deal. So that's all you see, which I'm happy with. And then this side, like I said, I brought it back and curled it. You can see it goes back and just lays on top of the transmission back there. And wraps, it kind of like loops around and comes back. So a little longer than I needed, but I made it work. And there's just going to be rubber hoses on here, so it's just going to sit on top of the rubber. Not a big deal. I didn't want the fitting resting right up against the exhaust. I kept it away a bit. I could turn it towards the front a little bit more yet. But yeah, so that was for the most part the stuff that came in the kit, like the eBay Rev 9 twin turbo kit. That was the feed lines minus the one I had to have made up to make this one longer. All the return line stuff and the fittings, you know, your top and bottom flanges came in the kit. The 90-degree elbows I had to buy separately because just the way I have my setup, the 90s work best. But you know, if you have your turbos mounted up high or something like that, a more straight run will work for you, and you might not have to buy any additional fittings. So then I bought the adapter that's on the side of the block to run 2 1/4-inch lines out of, which was like a $20 item on eBay. And that pretty much wraps up the oiling system for the turbos. Hope this was helpful. And the next video we're going to tackle wiring, and I'm getting rid of that airbox part that's on my firewall. I'm losing this. We're going to go through the harness and get rid of stuff I don't need. We're moving the coils inside the car, so I have to make new spark plug wires. That'll be my first time doing that, so I'm going to try and attempt to do that. But yeah, so next video, wiring. This video, oiling system complete. Till next time.